Okay. Discussion on Love Street property. Ms. Hanley, you're up.
Ready or not?
Welcome. Pardon?
It feels strange to be on this side. Hi, as you most know, I'm Joyce Hamley. We've had a situation come up on our street that they have evidently rented to two men who are now making it into a halfway house. Probably a lot of the concern in the neighborhood would have been a lot better if somebody would have approached the neighborhood, given us some heads up what's happening, what the rules, regulations. To this date, none of the neighbors except me has been talked to. Nobody knows for sure what's going to happen, how it's going to go, anything. I can attest to we've lived in that house for 42 years, for over 20. The people who have owned that house have done nothing to take care of that house. I am very concerned for the people who are going to be going in there. My understanding, there's going to be at least 6 people, 6 men, and a supervisor and a wife or something. That's 8 people in a very small 1.5 bath house. There are trees overhanging. There is no backyard. It has not ever been cut in the last 10 years. They have no place to walk, go out. The front yard is minute. There has been no gutters on that house for well over 15 years. When and if it ever rains again, the rain level seriously is 2 to 3 inches surrounding most from the side all the way to the back is covered in water and puddle for days. Mold, I have been told by the people, thank God that we had for 4 years that kept the house halfway decent, that the roof still leaks, that there is mold, that there's a terrible odor in the back bedroom that they can smell when it is hot, that there are limbs laying on the wires that go to the box, to the circuit box outside, that they're just laying. All these things have been addressed and told to the landlords, and not one thing has been done for it. The people living there had a hole in their bathroom floor for well over 3 to 4 months that they could look at the dirt. And I understand the floor has now been repaired. But this is the kind of response. Is this the response that these people who are trying to get their lives back together are going to live under? I am very concerned with this thing. It would be nice if people would approach us, kind of tell us. I'm understanding there's a curfew. Is curfew at 6 o'clock? Does that mean they can't come out? Or will they be walking on the street? They have been told that they may not smoke a cigarette on this property, that they have to walk down the street and up the hill to smoke. This means they're passing a dead-end road going down our street, standing by our mailboxes, which they shouldn't be doing. We don't know who they are or what. We do not have any clue who they are or what they're doing. It just gives us, we've had nothing but drugs and violence in those houses for at least 15 years, and the neighbors, to say, are unsettled because of the conditions they've had to put up with. They finally thought they were having their home safe, and now they're not sure for sure what is going on. I just would like somebody, be it the health department, that they should have to meet an inspection. That house should have to be looked at before they can put people in there and feel safe. That's about all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Joyce. Was there anyone else, William, Ms. Hanley?
Pardon me?
Was there anyone else that wanted to speak to this issue?
I'm going to do it all.
Okay. Okay. Madam Manager will look into this.
We certainly can. I know the attorney, Mr. Henning, myself, and our town planner, Mr. Setzer, we've been informed of it. We'll be glad to look into it. Thank you for making us aware. We appreciate that, Ms. Hanley.
Good to see you.
Can I ask a question?
Certainly you may.
Are these houses licensed?
There are certain group home activities depending on whether you're providing some kind of care that you are required under state law to be licensed. From what I understand and from Justin's discussion with them, they are not planning on providing any medical care, counseling type care or anything like that that would fall under a licensure requirement. So there are, depending on what you're doing, what you hold yourself out as, they don't appear to fall under some kind of category like that. as your UDO is currently drafted, I don't know that necessarily, I think we do actually, Justin, remind me, we have treatment for where, in the UDO, where a facility like that would have to go and it wouldn't be a residential use.
Not one that's of that, like a halfway house. We don't have one listed, but we have ones for like adult daycare facilities, but not for like a medical rehab facility of any kind.
Mr. Henn, I also had a question. I wanted to know, are these people having to pay them? Are they paying rent for this? Does that now become some sort of commercial if they're paying?
No, I mean, there's lots and lots of residential rentals that are all over R1 and R2, you know.
And they have to show the income, and they have to have records and financial, that they're not going to be taken advantage of?
Well, I don't.
I'm just unsure whether these people have ever done this before.
Right.
Is this their first home that they're ever doing? Have they had training? You know,
Right.
some of the neighbors are talking about a class action suit. This is how upset, because a lot of information was not given to the neighborhood.
Well, and I, you know, that's part of where, and I think that Justin was right when he told you, and I haven't looked at the restrictions on your property, but there may well be a civil suit that you could consider taking on that wouldn't be something the town can take on your behalf, but something that you as property owners may have certain rights in the deed restrictions and so forth.
Thank you.
That you could look into. I think that, so there are certain types of facilities like these that you cannot zone out of a residential area. Those of you who had been here long enough ago remember when we did rezoning for the hospice house, may recall that we ran into, it's a family care facility that if it's people that are being, up to 6 people can live in and receive a kind of treatment. And not to get too far in the weeds, sometime in the late 80s, they tried to zone out housing like that because of AIDS homes is what it came down to. People didn't want them in their neighborhood. So there was a statute passed that said that's a residential use you have to allow there. I think you could, by ordinance, and this is something you could look into for future uses. I mean, this use may already be in process, and you could only make it non-conforming by a later change in your zoning. But you could say, and I think the way this is tackled in some places is to say no more than 5 people, unrelated people living in one residential unit are allowed, something along those lines, and that's potentially anyway. But we don't have anything in the UDO right now that makes that a disallowed use where this property is. So it's zoned for what they're doing, is I guess what I'm saying.
I've researched this quite a bit before this. Sober living homes are not, you do not have to be licensed or registered in the state of North Carolina. I don't see how, if there's no licensing requirements for this, that even under a UDO thing that you would be able to do that. If I wanted to open an Oxford house somewhere, which is that I can just rent a house and I can open one, and they are all over the state, and I personally, I don't know anything about this house. So I'm not trying to say this is okay, but I think this is a sign of things in the recovery community that are going to happen in towns. They're happening everywhere else, and it's going to happen here in some neighborhood, and we're just now kind of getting a taste of it. That's not to say I'm advocating this house, but I think it walks a very fine line about saying, I just don't see how the board can say you can't do that.
There's nothing in the minimum housing code.
Yeah,
I mean, I know
unless
that
it
is-
went something from that angle,
Yeah.
not as a,
There is in terms of living space, and Justin evaluated it for that, and they in fact had to adjust their plans a little bit to stay in conformity with, which they are doing, we're told.
So they are in conformity with
Yes.
the minimum housing? Okay.
Okay. Any further discussion? I guess, Ms. Hanley, what we'll do is we'll keep an eye on things, see where it's going, make sure it meets
And you will
minimum
be informed
housing.
of anything and anything that we deem.
I think
No.
probably this is something we need our fire chief to take a look to,
I think a fire chief would be a wonderful idea.
and make sure that all safety regulations are followed. I do know that they don't have to have a sprinkler system because of the number of people there, but I stay in touch with us. We'll be looking at it.
Thank you.
Pardon?
What would you have us do, Joyce?
I don't know. I guess we are more upset. What would I have you do? I don't know if you all can do it. I would like the house inspected for the safety of those people.
That'd be the minimum, that's the minimum housing approach.
Yeah, whatever for the safety, the codes. I just know how bad that house has been. Every one of the tenants that have been in and out of there have talked, because I'm next door. I've heard of all the conditions they've continued to live in some cases simply because they did not have the money to move. You know, they had to stay where they were because they couldn't afford to go elsewhere. But it has not been kept up. And I just don't know safety-wise.
But is that the issue in the neighborhood, or is it the quality of the people who are staying there?
Well, both. I'm sure it is both. We have not, and I don't know enough about it. I know that they're probably all have some kind of felony. That's fine. Is there sex offenders? We have a lot of small children in our
If
neighborhood.
they're sex
That's another
offenders-
big concern that nobody
sex-
has told or come forward to tell us what or who or what are the conditions. It's a lot of unknown instead of somebody just simply kind of maybe giving us a little heads up whether we liked it or not. We would have still gotten some information.
Right.
Chief Breedlove, could you and the fire marshal, I think y'all could go in and make an inspection. Can you? The fire marshal and the chief working together?
Do we know who's in charge of operating this? I've got very little details in
I have-
side of it. I would be glad to try to gain consent to do that and
Yeah.
organize that with the fire marshal's office and
Yeah.
see if we can make some ground.
Would you request that if? Okay, anybody else on this particular issue right now? If not, we'll move on to discussion on waiving tap fees.